let's talk about paint and pigments. So what you're seeing here is a range of acrylic paints. It comes in tubes, jars, pouches. It can be thick, it can be thin, and everything in between. There is a huge range of variety of what you can get for pigments, colors, and how they come in regards to acrylic paint. So one thing I should point out at the beginning is people often ask, what is the difference between acrylic paint and oil paint? They're designed in a very, very similar way. The biggest difference being that acrylic paint dries really, really quickly, which is a very beneficial thing to have while working in a studio practice. It's also a little bit safer as there isn't as many dangerous chemicals coming off of them. But with advances in what's been done, and we'll talk a little bit later about mediums in regards to acrylic paint, anything that oil paint can do, acrylic paint can now do, and some more. We've just mentioned that there's a range of thick paint, thin paint, so you may have seen high flow acrylic painting. So we can do everything with acrylic paint, creating incredibly thin, almost decorative work, to incredibly thick, heavy work that looks like the paint is just like standing up all by itself. The other issue with the range of acrylic paints that is available out there is it's difficult to know what to buy if you've never consistently bought paint before. And then the real question is, why is some paint much more expensive than others? A really good example is, you can see here there's a range of different companies, but if you went to one of the large art stores like Dick Blick. Dick Blick sells these large tubes of paint. They usually go for about $5 each, and every tube seems to be the same price. Now, when it comes to pigments, not all paints and all pigments are made the same. Some of the ingredients, such as the cadmium orange, you can see on the bottom half of the screen. Cadmium orange is a precious metal. Some other paints, say like an alizarin crimson or that phthalo green, which we can see in the center of the screen, those are synthetic dye. So the cost of the materials for these paints are very, very different. So why is it that the Blick product typically tends to be all of the same price? That is because it is mostly made up of a range of pigments and fillers. So, and it's not the best quality paint. So one way to really look at this is to really look at the chemical pigment that is in these paints. And a really good example is if we look here at the bottom of the screen, we've got a CP cadmium orange, which is by Golden Artist Colors. We have a Winsor Newton Artist Acrylic, which is their top of the line acrylic paint, and that is also a cadmium orange. Then also we have a Winsor Newton Galleria Acrylic, which is a lesser grade lesser grade type of paint, and this, if you look closely, is a cadmium orange hue. And if you see the word hue on any paint, it's a really good telltale sign that it is not the chemical that is designated for that color paint, but a range of chemicals made to look like that paint. So if we look right here, we can see this says P020. That is the chemical designation for the chemical precious metal cadmium that is used in this paint. And the CP up here before cadmium orange stands for concentrated pigment. So in this tube of paint, it is all cadmium with some medium to hold it together, and that's it. There's nothing else added in. If we look here at the other company, the Winsor Newton acrylic, and we flip it over, we can see here P020, that's all that's in there, and the medium to hold it together. Now if we look over here at the cadmium orange hue, we flip it over, we have PY POR6.5 and POR9. And those are two cheaper synthetic pigments. One is a yellow and one is a reddish orange color. So it gives the illusion when you open those tubes up that they look very, very similar to a cadmium orange, but it is not. And the other telltale sign is if you pick up each of these tubes, they're the same size. This one is going to weigh so much more than this tube because this is all cadmium and this is all synthetic. And the cadmium is a precious metal and it weighs more. It's a really good telltale sign. If a tube of paint weighs a lot, it's a good quality tube of paint. So with all of this information in mind, as you're looking at materials to buy, I always urge people to buy the best paint that you can afford. It will end up being, it's like cooking food. The better the ingredients you have, the better the meal will turn out. The better tools and the better materials that you use in creating artwork, the better it will come out in the end. One of the issues that will come up in regards to using cheaper, more synthetic pigments is that they will mix in strange ways with colors that you weren't expecting. And sometimes you'll have a lot more difficulty getting the results that you want from a particular pigment.